Hello ladies and gents, Jarek Defiler here. Welcome to an introduction into my first video game series for non-gamers. My goal here is to introduce those who have little to no knowledge of video games to the hobby. I'll be going over various genres, although not all of them, as some I'm just not familiar with enough to give a valid opinion on. We'll look at what each genre entails, how to approach them, as well as get down to the bare bones of actually playing them. I was inspired to do this series after watching a video by YouTuber Rasputin entitled What Games Are Like for Someone Who Doesn't Play Games. Recommend you check it out as it's very enlightening and entertaining. I connected with that video because I too saw the problems non-gamers have with games, mainly from watching my significant other first try to play an FPS or a first-person shooter. I watched as she struggled with the controls and objectives because the game simply didn't tell her what to do or how to do it. This is a common problem I see among video games, where they simply assume that the person playing is already familiar with how games function. Although many games have tutorial levels, they are generally very vague and still assume the player has some basic knowledge of how video games work. This is a problem for non-gamers, as they are thrust into this technical world of wonder that simply bombards them with copious amounts of information that makes it difficult getting the point across. I've seen it among friends and family alike, where they simply become frustrated and give up because they just don't know what to do and the game doesn't really show them how. You often have to babysit them in order for them to understand the most basic concepts of the game. I hope this series can help remedy some of these issues by introducing non-gamers to the fundamentals and functions of some video game genres. That said, I have my own limitations in this field. For one, I'm almost strictly a PC or computer gamer rather than a console gamer. PCs are desktop computers or laptops, whereas gaming consoles are the smaller box units such as PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, etc. Consoles are built as is with few exceptions, while PCs are generally made up of multiple components that can be built from scratch, switched out, and upgraded on a whim. Although I do have and have owned many consoles, as the years passed, I found myself using them less and less as computers are simply far more powerful and upgradable, as well as having a much larger video game pool to choose from. Unfortunately, this does leave me out of the loop a bit on console exclusives, which are games that are solely released on a specific console, but that's okay. So, going forward, be aware that I will mostly be discussing PC games here, as there are simply far more genres on PC, and a great deal of games found on console can be found on PC anyways, or eventually be ported to PC. What does that mean? Well, to port a video game basically means to transfer the software from one system to another. So, in the video game realm, a PC port is a game that was initially released on console that has since been added to PC so it's available on both platforms. A platform in this context is the type of device that one plays video games on, such as Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Nintendo Switch, etc. Each platform has their strengths and weaknesses, but again, my focus will primarily be on PC. Now let me give you a quick breakdown of what I'm looking to do in this series. Keep in mind this may change as time goes on and I may add or remove topics and whatnot, but hopefully this will serve as a simple guideline for me to stay on task. So take this with a grain of salt, as it is not written in stone. For starters, these videos will most likely revolve around discussing genres such as RPG, FPS, survival, etc. I will leave some genres out that I feel I don't have the knowledge of discussing in great detail, or that are so simple to understand that I don't feel a video is warranted to explain them, such as racing or most puzzle games. Then I will add some common terminology and language explanations of games as a whole, as well as some jargon from each genre. Naturally, I won't be able to cover all jargon, as there is a plethora of it and a lot that I'm not even aware of due to the constant evolving nature of internet lingo. As the series progresses, we will begin taking a look at specific examples of each genre and then getting into how to play them from the ground up. This will include settings, controls, hotkeys, etc. Although I will probably discuss the use of game controllers, mostly I will be using keyboard and mouse, as that is what PC tends to use. A lot of games are mixed genres, and one can benefit from looking into those and learning multiple aspects, so we will most likely be checking out games like that as well in the future, but ultimately we'll start out slow and ease into each genre respectively, and then perhaps ramp up to some of the more advanced games. Should be fun. I will be releasing these videos periodically based on the time I have to make them, so if you're interested in seeing these, then be sure to keep tabs on my channel or Twitter to see when they're uploaded, as I have no set schedule yet and will get to them when possible, as I do have a day job. Boo. There are so many genres of games out there that it would take me a lifetime to cover them all, and some I'm not even familiar with or a fan of, so in light of that, I will simply cover a few that I really enjoy and am fairly knowledgeable about. These genres are also a great introduction to games as a whole, because once you learn their mechanics and systems, they can basically be integrated into other genres with ease. That said, I may add or drop some in this list as I go on, but for now, here are the genres that I will be mostly focusing on throughout this series. FPS. This is perhaps the most popular game genre among the mainstream consumers. FPS stands for first-person shooter. The concept is very simple. You control a character through a first-person perspective, and you run around shooting or meleeing things depending on the game. But what makes an FPS is the first-person perspective. These games tend to be fairly fast-paced and explosive, with lots of action and fancy effects and graphics. Although the newer FPS titles are somewhat slower and more cinematic, rather than adrenaline-fueled like their older counterparts, much to their detriment in my opinion. This genre is responsible for putting video games on the map and introducing them to the mainstream. The most notable FPS games would be the Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Halo franchises, as well as Doom, Wolfenstein, which started the entire genre with Wolfenstein 3D back in 1992, Quake, Counter-Strike, and more. These are perhaps some of the easier games to pick up, but are fairly hard to master, and I think they'll be a good starting point for the series given that they're the most popular. RPGs! RPG, which happens to be my favorite gaming genre, stands for role-playing game. These all stem back to the 70s tabletop role-playing days of Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing games where the players are present in person and perform character actions through speech and dice rolls. RPGs have the player taking on the role of a character or characters in a given setting. There is a plethora of different subgenres to RPGs, but the gist of it is that the games follow a narrative that the player's character is involved in some way and develops accordingly. The development of the character is decided by the player through concepts such as skill trees, ability and stat choices, path choices in the story, training, and more. We will go over these points more in depth in my future RPG videos. RPGs are great for people who want a more story-driven experience that takes its time and slowly immerses the player into a new, exotic, and foreign world. Where FPS are usually all about being thrust headfirst into non-stop action, RPGs are more about a gradual buildup of a character that starts out weak but eventually turns into a powerful entity that can rival the gods. If you're looking for an immersive, fun time building a character or characters that can take dozens to hundreds of hours to fully experience, then RPGs are probably for you. Strategy, the oldest genre of games. Strategy games have been around for literally thousands of years with games like Mancala and chess. But in video games, they have taken on a new form that is both mentally engaging as well as challenging when it comes to testing one's reflexes. Like RPGs, strategy games also have a lot of subgenres that I will dip into in future videos, but generally, strategy games revolve around the player controlling a civilization or faction through means of building units, constructing buildings, and implementing various tactics through different campaigns and/or maps known as the playing field. This usually involves micromanagement of individual or groups of units, as well as micro/macro management of the entire civilization or base as a whole. This is another one of my favorite genres, as it tickles the brain meat in a way that forces you to be smart lest you lose. We'll be looking into some of the most influential strategy titles such as Age of Empires 2, StarCraft 2, and maybe eventually get into grand strategy games such as Civilization or Stellaris. MOBA. Also known as Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, MOBA is a very specific genre that is usually PvP or player versus player focused rather than PvE, player versus environment. Each side has 5 players on average, and they fight in 3 lanes to push into the enemy player's base. Each player controls a different character with their own specific skills and abilities that they level up as each match progresses. Although fairly straightforward, MOBAs are very complex given the vast character pool to choose from and all the mechanics and items involved. The games dominating this scene would be League of Legends and Dota 2, 2 powerhouses in the industry as a whole. I'll most likely be using Heroes of the Storm in my videos as it is fairly casual and thus far easier to learn the genre. MOBAs are a good fit for people who seek more fast-paced action than a regular strategy game while still entailing use of tactics and strategy in each given match. Tactical turn-based. Although somewhat of a subgenre of strategy, I feel tactical turn-based games deserve their own category. They're generally built around the player controlling a group of characters. In each turn of a match or mission, every character gets a set amount of actions they can perform or moves they can take. This is all based on a point system, usually referred to as AP or action points. Like chess, each turn must be thought out ahead of time and take into consideration all the facets of the field of play, be it enemy position, elevation advantage, obstacles, defensive structures, and more. Fans of strategy games like chess will most likely really dig the style of tactical turn-based games. Among those I may discuss are XCOM 2, Battle Brothers, and Shadowrun Dragonfall for an RPG take on the genre. Okay, that should be a good start for now. I'll get started on these, but will be taking my time as I very much prefer quality over quantity. Given this will be my first series, I'm sure it'll be a learning experience as I go, so things may change as I discover new and better ways to get information across. Hopefully this series will help non-gamers to gain some familiarity with gaming as a whole, and then get them comfortable to forge their own path in the realm of aliens, orcs, robots, and dwarves. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all going forward. Take it easy, I'm out.